Hi there. I want to work through with you a simulation of an exercise that I used to do sometimes at the end of a class when we had 5 minutes or so to spare. Part of a crusade of mine to try and convince you guys that you have enough time to plan your essays and that planning your essays can lead to really good essays. I want you to look out for a number of things, but I'd draw your attention to three right now. Take a look at how many words I use. I used to argue that we should look for about 24 words in an essay plan. There's nothing magical about 24, but we don't want to overrun too much or the essay plan becomes too long. It will take up too much time and you won't thank me for it. So look out for that. I think the other thing is to look out for opportunities in questions. Don't look at them as the enemy. Look at them as a friend that's going to allow you to show the examiner how much you know and how well you understand this question. So look for opportunities. And the third thing I would maybe not ask you to look out for, but I'd ask you to think about and be aware of, there is no such thing as one essay plan. If I was to do this exercise in a month's time, I would most likely write different essay plans. This is what I was thinking about today. It doesn't mean to say I'll be thinking exactly the same way in a month's time or a year's time or whatever. There is no such thing as one good plan. But a plan is likely to be good. So take a look at the exercise. It is artificial, but I hope you find it useful. Now then, you're just going to have to trust me on this. I've gone through my past collection of exam questions that I've got collated in topic order and then date order. So this set of three won't particularly be in date order. And I've selected out three different topics, and I've tried to select out exam questions that are structured differently so that we can have a look at how we might approach different types of question. I've cut and pasted them onto this Word, and I'll close this. I've cut and pasted them onto this Word, and I don't know however long that took me. I suppose I've had a little bit of time to think about the questions, but not really. I'm trying to present a situation where I'm in much the same situation as you are in the exam, because I want to get across that there's no such thing as a perfect essay plan, but that we can write essay plans in not too much time. So anyway, enough of this rambling. Let's have a look at the first question. The First World War was the main cause of the 1917 February-March Revolution in Russia. To what extent do you agree with this statement? All right. Okay, so I will always look to try and earn marks in introductions. And it seems to me that this is an essay that lends itself to a bit of context in the introduction. So the main statement is that World War I was the cause of the Feb Revolution. And that's where I'd begin. But what's the context leading up to that? Right, okay. I would talk about 1905 briefly, to use it to illustrate that Tsarism was wobbling somewhat before World War One, but I think I would also use that. Not plus. But World War One was supported. Not going to say it was popular, but the Russian people did get behind their Tsar and their country, put their troubles behind them, and they supported the war. I don't know why I put a capital B there, but anyway. So we have, I think, a context that will get me some marks. I'm not just wasting my time getting the essay started. So this kind of question, I would guess everybody always goes with the statement and deals with that first. So where would we see World War One as bringing about the overthrow of the Tsar? Well, we have weak war leadership. Here I can write about the leadership from the Tsar downwards was weak right through his regime. I could talk about the defeats right from the beginning, right to the end. I could talk about the appalling number of casualties, the poor supplies coming to the troops, the chaos in the railway system. I could write a good paragraph, I think, on weak leadership. The other thing I think I would focus on is the crises at home. We have the peasants with no incentive to produce excess food to feed the cities, and so the cities were starving. Working conditions were awful. The food supplies were bad. There was inflation. And something I always point out with dealing with Russia is that winters are really, really cold. And there was a lack of fuel in the cities too. So, crises at home, I can write a good paragraph on that. But what else was a factor? So we have to move to the times before the war. Well, Tsarism as an anachronism. Tsarism was quite simply past its sell-by date. I would write about the lack of participation in the system, right up to the aristocracy were frustrated that their voice was not being heard in the government, by the government. So I would write about the lack of participation, the appalling lack of civil rights, and I think I would write about 1905 giving hope with the introduction of the Duma, but then, those reforms were very quickly pulled back, and it was as if nothing had ever happened. So I think that would make for a good paragraph, and I would back that up with Russian backwardness and write about the appalling state of the economy. It's agriculture is still so primitive. It's not moved on an awful lot since the abolition of serfdom. Its industry is only just getting going. And there is that frustration right throughout the classes. Nobody is happy, not the peasantry, not the middle class, such as it existed, and not the aristocracy. They want Russia to be a more modern state. So I've got a balance there in my essay. I would conclude by, I think, going for picking up on the second half of my essay, taking it into the conclusion. I would argue that the fundamental factors, the anachronism, the backwardness, were actually more important, but that World War I was the trigger for the revolution. And so there I think we've got a good essay. Good essay. Remember, I don't know how many words are there, but I'm pretty sure it's under my little target. I target 24 words. Nothing special about the 24. It's just a target so that we don't get carried away by writing too many words. All right. Let's have a look at the second essay. Now, you should expect in exams, in history exams, compare and contrast questions. So we best be prepared as to how to respond to them. Sometimes you would write half your essay on comparisons, half your essay on contrasts. Sometimes you would write your different paragraphs and part of it would be comparing a particular issue, factor or whatever, and part of it would be contrasting. I think in this one, let me think. I think in this one, I would go for paragraph comparing, a paragraph contrasting. And of course, we have another side to this question. We're instructed to compare and contrast, but social and economic policies. In this kind of question, really, the plan is in the question. I have to compare, I have to contrast, I have to include social policies, and I have to include economic policies. So really the plan is almost done for me. But what's my introduction going to be? Well, right. Interestingly, this is a question that has two fascist leaders. So my intro would be, I think, to outline principles of fascism. I'm not going to spend too long on it, but I should be able to bring those principles into my essay. I hopefully will be earning marks as soon as I start scribbling on that paper. So, principles of fascism. Now then, I'm going to begin with economic issues because I think I can go for something interesting here. One of my problems with this question is that it's a while since I've looked at either Hitler or Mussolini, and to be perfectly honest, I'm not too hot right now on the detail of their policies. And so I'm going to try and hide that fact, I think, and go for something more generic. So let's have a look. Economic contrasts. Well, look, Mussolini comes to power before the Great Depression. Hitler comes to power after the Great Depression. So that's going to have a contrast on the economic policies. And the other thing where they would contrast, and I'm on a roll here, I think, is the development of the economies, because Italy, trying to phrase this correctly, Italy is not that advanced. It's not a backward economy entirely, but it's not that advanced. Certainly in the south of Italy, which contrasts it with Germany, that although it's reeling from the Great Depression when Hitler comes to power, Germany is an advanced economy. It's there competing neck and neck with Britain, and it's not that far behind the American economy. So I think there are contrasts there. Economic comparisons, well, I'd go back to my introduction and say, well, they're both fascist economies. So they're both fascist. And that means there'll be an acceptance of capitalism, but an attempt to control capitalism for where the state wants to direct it. But there will be a stronger control on workers, and both economies prepare for war. So I can write about that. The consumer economy will suffer because of that. There will be a move for autarky in both economies. So I've got, I think, a good paragraph I can write about there. Now then, social. Okay, I'm going to stay with comparisons. And again, I'm thin on detail here, but I know I can write a paragraph on creating fascists, because I can go to look at how they both sought to control the education system in what was taught. They both set up youth movements. They both seek to control the role of women in society. So I think I can write a good paragraph there making reference to policies, but hiding the fact that I don't know too much detail. Whereas for the contrasts, okay, going to be just one thing here, and that's race. I can write a paragraph there contrasting the priority given to race in Nazi Germany and the half-hearted, I don't know if that's the right phrase, but the lesser priority given to race in Italy. For a conclusion, well, it's not a to what extent or how far essay, but I think you have to conclude with, well, how far do they compare or contrast? And I think I can justifiably say, well, it was mixed. It was pretty mixed, which is a surprise. I could add that in my conclusion. It's a surprise given that they are both fascist states. So that's our second essay. And in doing this, don't forget something else that's important, I think, with essay plans is that, my essay plans are not perfect. My essay plans are not going to be the same as yours. That doesn't matter. There's no such thing as perfection. There's no such thing as one way to answer a question. But I think by planning, I'm going to be in more control. So let's have a look at the last question. In what ways and with what results? Often, the most important word in an essay question is "and," because "and" means there's two things there straight away. In what ways and with what results? So again, I've got an essay plan being written for me here. I've got to deal with those two things. In what ways and with what results for Europe between 1939 and 1949? Always, there's something interesting there. Always make sure you're checking your dates, reading the question carefully. 1949 is after the war has finished. Okay, was the Second World War a total war? All right. In what ways was it total? With what results for Europe was it total? All right. So I'm rocking now, I think. And here is the perfect definition introduction. Define total war. I'm going to write about the government control of the economies, of the conscription of men into the army, total in the sense that the home front is so important, total in the sense that of the numbers of men conscripted, total in the sense that civilians were targeted in the war. So a definition, and again, I'm sure that will come out in my essay. Now then, in what ways was it total? Well, I've already begun to talk about that, haven't I? Control of the economy. I think I would go for short essays, for short paragraphs here, because I want to make sure I'm covering all the ways. So I'm going to go for control of the economy. I'm going to go for control of people, both on the home front, encouraging women into the workplace, packing the kids off to the countryside to avoid the bombing. And of course, I've already mentioned conscription. So control of people. And I've already mentioned targeting civilians. So I think in all those ways, it was indeed a total war. But I can't write too big a paragraph on each of those, or I'm going to be struggling to stay on time. So I've dealt with the first half of the question, results. For results, well, the thing I know I could write a lot about is the plight of civilians. the 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 hardships that they had to endure on the home front, with rationing, for example, with the loss of their loved ones, with the children packed off to the countryside, all of those things. The plight of civilians, the results were quite profound. The bombing of cities. So I can write a good chunky paragraph on that. And we've got to deal with 1949, got to take it up to there. So I have to have a paragraph post-war. Well, I'll write about the post-war chaos. I can write about the situation in Britain, and I could write about Weimar Germany and they're undergoing a revolution, and the chaos that they're facing. And I think I would write about the lengthy rebuild that they're dealing with. They've got to get men back to work. They've got to recover from the loss of life. The loss of life means the loss of incomes in families. It means the state has to help those families with war pensions. There's the destruction in Germany. Germany needs rebuilding. So I could talk about that. And as a conclusion, my conclusion, it was indeed total war. So there you go. I think I've got 3 good essay plans. Trying to convince you that essay plans are important. All the detail I've been talking about, that's in my head as I'm writing the plan. Now, the beauty of the plan, I think, falls in 2 ways. One, I have structure. Each of these plans flows. I go from one thing to the other. If I get a bit mixed up in writing it and I think, oh, this paragraph should come before this one, it doesn't matter. I can deal with that. I can spot that because I've written it down. The other thing, though, is whilst I'm writing my paragraph on weak war leadership or on the economic contrasts or on the plight of civilians, I don't have to worry about the next paragraph. I've written down what it's going to be about. I'm not making this up as I write. I know where I'm going with this essay. So I can put, 6-7 minutes of fierce concentration on the plight of civilians. That way, I'm in control of my essay, and I'm going to be able to focus on the right things at the right time. Please, please trust me. Essay plans are worth the time and worth the effort. So I hope, as I always say, that was useful for you. And thank you for listening. So there you go. 3 essay plans for you. I hope the old 2-finger approach wasn't too tortuous. One thing to add. If there's a plan that you want me to look at, drop me a line, historymadeeasier@gmail.com. I'll be happy to give it back to you privately or share it online and give you my ideas of that particular essay. So good luck with your planning. Please follow my crusade and believe in the plan. They do work. Good luck. Cheers.